So allow me to introduce our next topic. Now, we're going to talk about innovation with integrity. We hear a lot about that, a lot about safety, a lot about doing things ethically and with integrity. And I think that is important as we move on to the AI era. So our next conversation brings together our thought leaders from both fintech and infrastructure to explore how partnerships can deliver scalable AI solutions that prioritize integrity and public benefit. All right, for those of you who are looking for a seat, please fill up the front row seats, okay? It's free seating for all. Okay, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our two speakers who are here with us, but we want to wait for a few more. For those of you who want to grab a seat, now is the opportune time to do so. Okay, let's put our hands together and welcome David Shrier, a professor of practice for AI and innovation at Imperial College, together with Farhan Ahmad, Group CEO of PayNet, on stage to share with us more.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for the water. Good afternoon, everyone. I think we have a topic laid out, but we're going to have a very broad discussion because we have an AI expert here from Imperial. So we're going to use the chance to talk about many different topics that affect how AI will impact the country, the region, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, we only have a short time. So let me quickly introduce David. David is a professor of practice, AI and innovation at Imperial College London. He was writing books on AI before it became a trend, and he was writing books on how it's going to impact society at large. David and I have been working together for a year and a half now, I think, to try to bring the best world-class thinking to Malaysia about various topics in financial services, in public policy, in energy, in society, all those kind of things as well. So it's a privilege for us to have David here. It's a pleasure for me to be here chatting with David about the work that we've done on sovereign AI and financial AI as well. Passing on to you, David.
Yeah, so we've spent now a good amount of time diving deeply into this topic of sovereign AI, which is in the headlines. You hear NVIDIA's CEO talking about it. A lot of people are really interested in it, but what is it really? And why are people so interested in this? And in order to think about, so what is sovereign AI? The very first thing, just to get the definition out there, sovereign AI is AI that is principally supported by a government rather than by exclusively a private sector actor. But that covers a wide range of implementations. And in order to understand why, it's important to understand why are countries so interested in sovereign AI. So, of course, there is the economic opportunity, right? There are hundreds of billions of dollars US being invested in AI. But in addition to that, we have interest in preserving cultural and linguistic relevance, strategic autonomy, protecting against misinformation. There's a whole host of rationales or drivers why countries are pursuing sovereign AI. As a result, when you look at implementation, you have a wide range of how sovereign AI is showing up. So on one end of the spectrum, you have very tight coupling, excuse me, tight government control. And so that example would be China is very closely controlling the data that goes into AI and what the outputs look like. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have very loose coupling. These are like open source sovereign AI systems where, for example, JACE out of the GCC, the Islamic large language model, is supported by government, but there are a lot of contributors and there's very loose government control over that system. So when you hear sovereign AI, what you should think about is a spectrum of implementation around how government can support the AI revolution. And so how is PayNet thinking about this? Why is it even important to PayNet in the first place?
Sure. So Imperial College and PayNet, we've been collaborating since a year and a half. Last year, we launched a joint paper around building sovereign AI for not just Malaysia, but countries in the global south, countries who are not building foundational models. We shared that paper last year at ETH in Zurich at an AI policy summit. ETH is the hallowed halls where Einstein used to walk, so we're very proud to share something quite groundbreaking about how countries like Malaysia should think about sovereignty in the world of AI. More recently now, we are, as PayNet, that was a broader role. Since then, the journey in Malaysia has really advanced. We have the National AI Office and the 2030 Action Plan for AI as well that's been talked about here. So I think we've crossed that first bridge, and now it's really about specific value, right? So now we're working together on something called Financial GPT. And actually, it's a LTM, it's a large transaction model, more than anything else, to use the data that we have locally, available locally, as PayNet, as the central payment network for the country, to solve problems for Malaysians, solving financial crime, reducing scams and frauds, protect the country from cybercrime, broadly speaking, protect the financial infrastructure from cybercrime, using that data and using that large language model or the large transaction model, really, because it's not really an LLM, it's more like a LTM, to build financial inclusion in a meaningful way, to understand how do we make sure that as AI advances in financial services and beyond, that the benefits are available and accessible to everybody and not just a select few. Because the concern, and it's very well-founded concern looking at historical patterns, is if we don't intervene and we don't build this, the benefits will go to a select few only. That's how technology evolution has happened in every other part, every other tech upgrade. So I think this is the cycle we're in, and PayNet, as in a national charter, national infrastructure, is very focused on solving financial issues using AI. And thank you for your assistance in that one.
Yeah. Well, and the financial GPT is a great example of something, a trend that we're starting to see, where people are going from talking about AI and running experiments to actually delivering tangible benefits to populations, to show the average person, what does AI mean for me? What can it do for me? Right? So people read about AI in the press, and they're understanding at a high level what's going on there, but now they're starting to see it show up in their daily lives.
I think that's key, right? Because there is a usage of AI, and we should all be daily practitioners in that, because this is the single biggest event that's happened, certainly in my lifetime. It is not about how do we do presentations faster or better. It's a game-changing and life-changing event. AI today is already better at most things than most humans are. And so I think we have to make sure that we keep thinking about the public benefit and the public good across every single sector when we look at AI. So Financial GPT is really a version of that. We do have a white paper that we have written, I said last year. If you use that QR code, you can scan the white paper and see it. And it's kind of a plan. And it's a plan not just for Malaysia, it's a plan for any country in the global south that is not building foundational models, doesn't have the resources, the capacity, the funding, but they should still have a point of view and a strategy for sovereignty and for public good within that nation and area. That's been very successful, so thank you for your partnership on that.
Well, and Malaysia has an interesting sort of position and role to play within the broader context of ASEAN around AI and sovereign AI. And partly it's due to its resources that it has in order to take advantage of the AI opportunity. So that was something that we dug into when we were looking at the sovereign AI topic. What is it that is required to be successful with setting up an AI infrastructure? And so we found 5 key elements that are highly relevant for being positioned for AI success. So one of them is obviously hardware and access to the latest generation chips from NVIDIA and the other parts of the hardware stack that go around it. A second one is energy, making sure you have a stable energy grid and the sufficient energy supply. So some countries are having to decide between, do we run our aircon or do we run our AI data centers? And so Malaysia has, in this instance, a very robust energy supply. Third one is water. These AI systems need a lot of water for cooling. So every time you run a query on ChatGPT, you are using 1 bottle of water to cool the systems. So Malaysia, again, has a large quantity, large supply of water, stable supply of water. The fourth element is carbon and carbon offsets. And the last one is talent. And I don't mean talent like, generally speaking, someone who did a class online on Coursera and now they know what machine learning is. I mean advanced AI talent. So right now, there's a global competition for talent going on. And you see this countries like Singapore and the Emirates and other countries around the world are trying to attract the most advanced AI talent that they can in order to build these systems. And at the high end, there are only about 2,000 people in the world who really know how to build the most advanced AI systems. And then there's probably 20 to 50,000 tech nomads who are sort of deciding what country do they get involved with and where do they settle in. And this talent topic is something that we've talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right? I think as we looked at Malaysia and its positioning in the potential for AI leadership, global leadership, is phenomenal across, whether it's energy, whether it's water, actually carbon offset. We have an amazing bed of seagrass around our shores that is one of the most efficient ways to absorb carbon from the air, like 80 times better than trees, for example. And we have that in abundance. So actually, from a carbon offset, we're amazing too. We have no seismic activity. It's pretty amazing how well-positioned Malaysia is for global leadership. The question really is talent, right? That is the first big thing to sort through is how do we attract talent, and then how do we grow and nurture talent to learn about AI in a very meaningful way? Not about using ChatGPT to shortcut presentations or even learning N8N and those kind of tools. Those are tools. It's about the foundational, how do you create it? How does it work? Who's building foundational things, foundational models? Are we optimizing chips? Are we optimizing models? That kind of talent has to be nurtured. And that is a national effort that has to take place, because I do believe we just like you said, 2,000 or so in the whole world. If Facebook is giving everybody $100 million to join from OpenAI as an attractive bonus, and that is not sufficient to attract those 2,000 people, what is Malaysia going to do to attract that same talent and offer them a fresh grad salary that cannot compete with those numbers?
And when you look at talent and attracting talent, it's not just the money. There's a whole sort of array of policy interventions that governments can take to make a country and a domicile more attractive to talent. So that includes things like, how easy is it to get a visa and to get a nomad visa so you can stay for maybe a few years and help contribute to the local economy? How easy is it to do business? How quickly can you incorporate a company and set up a bank account? So in the US, where I am originally from, you can incorporate a company in a couple of hours in Delaware and get a bank account open the same day. In the UK, where I've been living now for the last few years, you can incorporate in about a day or two, and it may take another day or two if you're going to use an e-money like a Revolut account or something, but it could take a week or two if you're trying to set up a bank account at a high street bank like a Barclays or an HSBC. But in some of the other countries around the world, when you're trying to set up a company, set up a bank account, be an entrepreneur, contribute to the local economy, it can take months to arrange your visa. It can take months to set up a company, and getting a bank account can sometimes feel like mission impossible. So those are just a few examples of where attracting talent is not just around can you pay the highest salary. It's how easy is it to allow for that mobility of talent, to allow people to come into your country and get an apartment, get a flat, and get set up in the country.
I think that's a great point. And actually, PayNet has also written a paper on that, around how do we have a talent strategy that aligns with the pace of change in the world. Because when we go to Zurich together, when we were in London together, we were in at MIT in the spring around AI, the pace is actually quite breathtaking. The amount of changes, I'm going to use N8N as a great example. 2 months ago, that was the topic du jour and the tool du jour that everybody was learning, and now it's obsolete. That took 2 months from creation to obsolete. Right? That's a very different cycle. And we're not used to that cycle, right? Because governments won't move at that pace. Companies will have to move at that pace. And I believe that locally we have quite a strong dependence on government action before we do things on a private level. Let me ask you maybe another controversial question about
Hit me.
limitations on AI. Language. There's 200-odd countries in the world, thousands of different languages. Primarily, the foundational models are all in English. Maybe tell me about how you see the Global South getting ready to embrace the full benefits of AI while dealing with content in their native language, as well as familiarity with English, which has become the de facto language for the current models. Maybe just share some thoughts on that.
And this was one of the big concerns that we heard come up as we talked to a lot of countries around why they were engaging with sovereign AI. One of the reasons that they told us was they're very concerned that their language is going to disappear if everything is English. And that it's important to have a locally domiciled model that can express itself in a local language. You know, some countries have low literacy rates. So really, you're talking orally expressed, verbally expressed language that you want to preserve. Some countries have a limited body of literature. This creates an issue when you're trying to train a model, because the model wants to train on a lot of data. And so it's looking for written material. And maybe if you don't have a big literary tradition or written tradition, then how are you going to train those models? On the flip side, the reason why a lot of these large language models are primarily in English is because that's the largest body of sort of digitally available data outside of China is sort of English language. And so there are benefits to these English language models because they've been trained on these large sets of data, but at the same time, you have a strategic imperative from countries saying, yes, and we want to take advantage of that, but we also want to make sure that we have our local languages preserved. And so we need to think about how do we train and build powerful AI systems when you have a limited corpus of data. So GPT-5 was just launched, and supposedly it has 10 trillion parameters, so it's 10 times as much as GPT-4. And you know, what's a parameter? It's a connection between two words, which means you're going back to having a body of documents that people can look at. And so this is an unsolved, I don't want to pretend to have an answer. This is an unsolved challenge, but it is a very real challenge that people are grappling with now on a daily basis of how do we make sure that we preserve the best of our local culture and our local values and our language tradition while also not being left behind in the global AI race.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Dave. And I think that is one of the challenges that I see here as well. I think there's a tug of war between how much do we use Bahasa, how much do we use English, in what forums and context, and is there proficiency in both language, and is there enough content in both languages? English content is there because many people are producing it, but is there Malay content there? Because a small country of 30 million people that is only spoken here. And then is there, if we are leaning towards that side, are we building proficiency in English to be much better at prompting and getting and extracting the biggest value from AI? Because if we don't do that, we will not get the best value from AI. And that puts us at a competitive disadvantage vis-a-vis other countries that are maybe native in that language. So that's maybe one of the things that I always share with people here, that we must keep both. We must create more content in the local language, and we must also become more proficient at English, because today that is the de facto language for these models.
And so that's an example of one of the challenges when you're sort of grappling with AI. What are some of the other challenges that you're seeing starting to come up?
I think one thing I see is the very normal, natural focus on short-term outputs and gains. I hear the conversations around ROI, which is okay for a company to talk about, a small company to talk about ROI. But for any large company or or certainly the government, it should never be about ROI. Because this is a fundamental game changer, right? The smartest human will have an IQ of 200. The AI will have an IQ of 2,000 in the next 2 years. It's not about what money you're going to save by automating chatbots. That is already a passé use case. It's about the opportunities that it presents and the risks, the risk of not correctly embracing that opportunity. And that is a complete mindset shift, because that is not a ROI, I invest X and I get Y out of it. I think that argument can't be. Amazon was unprofitable for 15 years because they kept innovating and investing in growth and not worrying about ROI, because the ROI was coming in the future. In AI, to me, this is a time for just invest, learn, and grow. Invest deeply across every level, and the ROI will come later in a way that you have not yet imagined. I think this is going to be a challenge, because actually, I think Harvard Business School just did a little experiment, and they mashed up existing AI against some of the best CEOs in the world. I'm a CEO, so I can talk about this. And the AI was just better.
And this is something we're seeing. Like, some of the smartest people I know in AI research in the commercial world are trying to figure out, how do we have an AI CEO? Make the CEO obsolete and replace them with an AI. This is obviously not very popular with CEOs, but it is something that people are working on today, and it's a very sort of tangible area of investigation.
I think so. So that's a short-term look versus a long-term outlook, to me, is one of the biggest mindset risks. I mean, we're talking about the huge risk, right? This is still talent. It's still about ROI. It's still about the couple of things we've talked about. What do you think about is the role of by the way, we don't need the sign anymore, the white paper download. You can take that off from the screen. What do you think about the need for public policy or regulation, or perhaps what somebody might term an AI Bill of Rights? How do you see that? Is that a necessary part of a country to do in order to accelerate AI in their countries?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. We can't just leave this to the free market. This AI is such a fundamentally transformative technology, particularly at its point in evolution right now, where it suddenly has kind of crossed the chasm from being this specialty technology that only a handful of machine learning experts would know how to play with for very narrow uses, to being a broad-based technology that has many different application areas. And when you see that kind of transition, you often see a fundamental restructuring of economies and a fundamental restructuring of societies. And you don't want that to just kind of happen to you. You will not be happy with the outcome that you get if you just let that happen to you. In addition, because there's so much sort of talk about this and concern, and people are spending a lot of time thinking about this, there's a lot of confusion. And so the benefit of having good policy and good regulation is that you get regulatory clarity. It gives confidence for foreign direct investment. It gives confidence for companies to make longer-term decisions about infrastructure investments, about technology investments, about innovation investments. And so good policy and good regulation supports innovation. So something that people sort of forget about, and Silicon Valley in particular likes to sort of diminish this idea, but some very smart economists have revealed to us that all of the fantastic, amazing, fundamental technologies, including AI, that are transforming our worlds were originally government-sponsored programs. They did not come out of Silicon Valley. They came out of government, the internet, GPS, artificial intelligence, subsequently the World Wide Web, advanced power systems. Anywhere you look, something you're using today originally started as a large-scale government program and then bridged over into sort of private sector exploitation. So there's an important role in public-private partnership to advance this agenda, and in order to make that happen, you need to have a policy structure to enable that.
I think that's well said. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna jump into something a lot more controversial.
Yeah.
So, for people looking for more financial services stuff, we've kind of went off from there because we have David here and who travels around the world talking to people about AI. So we're going to talk about some bigger things. We're going to talk about artificial general intelligence, which I know you don't believe in, but some level of.
I believe in it, and that I believe in truth and justice. But I don't believe it's going to come next year. But go on, yes.
But some people would disagree and say it's going to come next year.
Sure.
And there are possible reasons for why.
200 years. 200 years. But that's not important. That's what we're going to talk about.
Correct. I think that's not important. But I think the reality is we talk about many things about societal impact. That does affect financial services, of course, but it's way bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I read a lot from this one person called Mo Godot, who's one of the founders of AI at Google, and he has a viewpoint around job creation or job production with AI. He has a viewpoint on dystopia or utopia, and his view is 15 years of dystopia followed by utopia when AI completely takes over and humans are not involved, because while humans are involved, it will be dystopia. And when humans are finally give up all their agency to the computers, it'll actually the world will become much nicer. So, before we jump into that part, maybe just the jobs. Your views, will AI in the next 5 years, 5-year horizon, yeah, not next year, 5-year horizon, 5 years from now, is AI created many more jobs or eliminated most jobs?
Yeah, so one thing that's important to understand is there are kind of different ways AI will impact us. And we dug in pretty deeply on this topic.